You're listening to a podcast by Way Collective, a contemplative community for love and liberation in Santa Barbara, California. This recording was the conversation starter at our dinner and dialogue gathering on March 25th, 2026. Thanks for tuning in. All right, good evening, friends. Well, I'm looking forward to sharing a bit tonight about what emerged for me in the wake of our reflections around the table as we came dressed as our egos last week. You know, we've said now multiple times during these Lenten conversations how the false self is our constructed identity and the ego is that defensive structure that maintains it. And I wonder if this resonates for some of us because a lot of us were handed a version of the spiritual life that sounded like an inner battle. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a part of us that wants the wrong things, and there's a part of us that knows the right things, and somewhere in the middle is you or me just trying to manage it all. And in some ways, that's not entirely wrong, I guess. There are different movements within us, or different voices, or different impulses. Part of us reaches for comfort, part of us reaches for approval, or part of us tries to hold it all together and make something workable out of our lives. But over time, that way of seeing ourselves can start to feel exhausting because it turns the inner life into a kind of constant negotiation, or worse, this quiet war that we're always waging. And what many of us were never told is this. The problem isn't that we have these parts. The problem is that we've come to believe that one small, constructed version of ourselves is the whole story. And what the spiritual tradition calls the false self, again, we might casually call the ego, isn't bad. It's brilliant, actually, because it learned how to be liked, how to feel safe or feel successful, or how to be acceptable in whatever world we found ourselves in. It learned how to read the room. It learned what to show and what to hide from others. It learned essentially how to protect us. And it did all of that for a reason. But over time, I wonder if something subtle happens. What began as a strategy becomes a more concrete identity. We don't just have an ego, we actually start to believe that this is who I am. And so we live inside a kind of narrowing, only showing certain parts, only trusting certain expressions of ourselves, or only allowing ourselves to be seen in certain or particular ways. And this is where the deeper invitation begins. Not to destroy that self or shame it, but to gently realize that this is not all of me. You know, there's more here, that I am always more than the roles I play or the images I maintain. I'm more than the parts of me that learned how to survive. And as that realization begins to open, it's like a light switch gets flicked on and something else becomes possible. We start to notice the parts we've pushed aside, the tenderness that we've hidden, maybe the griefs that we've avoided, or the longings that we've outgrown or never fully named. And instead of rejecting those parts of us, we begin to welcome them. Not because they're easy, because they're often not, but because they're insisting to us that they belong. And as that belonging deepens, something shifts. We don't have to work so hard to be someone anymore. We begin to rest just a little into something deeper. And this is where the contemplative tradition uses that language of the true self, because even that can be misunderstood. Because the true self isn't a better version of your personality. Do you know what I mean? Do you hear me in that? It's not the polished, healed, I finally got it all together version of you. It's more like the part of you that was never at risk to begin with. Do you see the difference there? It's the difference between walking into a room and quietly scanning, asking, gosh, how am I coming across? Do they like me? Am I saying the right thing? Versus those rare moments when you forget to do that altogether and you just find yourself laughing and present and unguarded, not performing, just there, you know? Or perhaps it's the difference between that voice in our heads that replays a difficult conversation all the way home. Why did I say that? I should have said this. What do they think of me now? And the deeper place in you that if you still can see yourself as enough, simply says, you're okay. You don't have to earn your place there. We all say things we wish we didn't. That's just a part of being human. Or maybe perhaps it's this one. You know, when you're just trying to hold it all together to be strong or composed or be that version of yourself you think people need, and then something breaks in you. You know, perhaps there's a tear or a moment of honesty, like many of us were sharing around the tables last week. And instead of everything falling apart, something actually softens and something real comes into the room and we feel more connected to each other. Or perhaps it could be this feeling. When you're with someone you trust deeply, perhaps a close friend or a partner or a child, and you realize, even if just for a moment, I don't have to be anyone right now. I don't have to impress them. I don't have to protect myself. I don't have to prove anything. And there's just a kind of quiet ease there, a kind of presence. That's what we're talking about. Not a perfected version of ourselves, but a less defended version. It's not a self that we achieve, but a self that begins to show up when all the striving, all the managing, all the performing relaxes its grip. It's that part of us that doesn't have to prove anything and doesn't have to earn belonging or defend its worth. It's the part of us that already belongs to God, to reality, or to others, or to this whole unfolding life that we share. So what we've been reflecting on thus far over Lent is that maybe the movement of the spiritual life isn't about fixing ourselves, but about slowly and gently letting go, loosening our grip on the smaller self that we each learn to be, so that something wider and more spacious or more connected can begin to hold us and live through us. And I think this is what struck me so deeply last week as we went around the tables and shared. Because as we shared honestly and vulnerably, and even playfully about our egos, it was pretty fun. What started to emerge was something I didn't quite expect. That underneath all the different ways our egos show up in the world, there was a surprising amount of sameness. Did you feel that too? We each had our different stories and our different strategies for protecting ourselves or projecting ourselves in the world. But beneath all of that, I saw a lot of the same longing. A longing to feel connected or to be loved or to feel successful or to be safe in community, to know that we belong. And it became clear that while the ego often presents itself as something unique, my personality, my patterns, my interests, my opinions, my way of being in the world, its deeper desires were actually not that unique at all. They're profoundly shared, and maybe I think that's part of the invitation here. Because when we stay at the level of the ego, it can feel like we're separate from one another. Each of us have to manage our own image, protect our place, and try to secure our own sense of worth. But as those protective layers begin to loosen, even just a little, something else comes into view. A kind of quiet recognition of our shared humanity. Oh, it's not just me. It's not just me feeling all these feelings I feel about myself at the interior level. It's not just me feeling all these big feelings about where our society is collectively in the world. And I'm a big believer that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or something else, or a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or something else, or whether you're straight or queer or trans, or whether you're female or non-binary or male, or whether you're black or brown or white, etc. I think you get it, right? All of us have these protective structures, but underneath, we share something profound in common. That what feels like unraveling is actually an unveiling. That what feels like letting go is actually this opening up. And maybe we could say it this way. What our unraveling egos unveil is not just emptiness alone, but a deepening sense of our interconnection. It's not isolation, but this deeper belonging. What giving up and waking up offers us is perhaps more love than we thought we were even allowed to receive. That the more we let go of who we thought we had to be, the more space there is for who we actually are to meet one another. So maybe just as importantly as we begin to loosen our grip on our own egos, we also begin to loosen our grip on each other. Do you see that connection? We don't need people to be more polished or more certain or put together or especially more on our side of things in order to belong. We begin to meet one another right where we are, unfinished, imperfect, still figuring it out, and still carrying our own ways of protecting ourselves like we all do. And instead of reacting with frustration or judgment, something in us recognizes this phenomenon in another. Oh, I know that place they're at. And what begins to emerge within us is not hate or division, it's not distancing, but it's this kind of quiet empathy for our shared human situation. A recognition that underneath all the ways we try to manage, perform, or protect ourselves, we're all in our own ways simply longing to belong and to have the opportunity to flourish. Do you feel that? And maybe that's the deeper movement of this whole journey of giving up and waking up. That as we soften toward ourselves, we become more able to soften toward one another. And in that softening, something like community, real community that doesn't dissolve differences, but actually tends to them in love, begins to take root. Okay, I'm looking forward to talking about this with you all tonight. So I've got 3 contemplative questions for conversation around the tables. And the first question here is the self question. As you reflect on your own life, where are you beginning to sense a deeper longing for connection or belonging beneath the roles that you play or the ways that you present yourself? Number 2 is the sacred question. What do you notice begins to open in you, spiritually or inwardly, when you let go, even briefly, of needing to prove your worth or secure your place? And lastly, we've got the society question. In a world where so many of us feel divided by identity or belief or experience, what might it look like to meet others with empathy for the ways they're trying to belong, especially when they're different from you? Thanks for listening to this podcast by Way Collective. To keep up with our community, you can subscribe to this podcast, go to www.waycollective.org, or follow us on Instagram at @waycollective. Peace and every good, y'all.